everyone. I'm Lindsay Hoffman, and welcome to the Dose of Bliss show, where we give you daily doses of bliss and share inspirational stories with you to live your best life. Today, we have a really exciting guest for you. She is a wrongfully accused victim of the justice system and a survivor of domestic violence, and she also has an amazing book we're going to talk about today. We have Amy Ballon here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm really excited to have you on the show because your story is so interesting. You were wrongly accused of a crime and went to jail for it. So what happened?
That's a great question. You know, life takes turns, and we never expect certain things. So let's throw that out there. You know, I grew up in Brentwood, California. I went to high school in Pacific Palisades. My life was pretty amazing. And I moved to South Florida when I was about 25. So I had a great career. I was in real estate development. And I was married when I was about 25, had kids, got divorced, had a great, run in some of the biggest projects in South Florida. And I was single and very, happily single because I was very self-reliant. And I met somebody who was so different than anybody I had met, very charming. He's from Oklahoma. He would wait on me hand and foot. I mean, he bought me a tiara, for God's sakes, on our second date, and that was how our romance began. And we got married very quickly thereafter, which everybody that knows me said, you've been engaged a few times before. Why are you getting married so quickly?
And how many months was this, or years, or?
Oh God, I'm embarrassed to even say it. It was 6 months.
Oh, 6 months.
We got married. We were talking, and it was a Sunday, and he said, we're going to get married this week. And I'm like, can't we just be engaged? Because I had done the engagement thing a few times in 18 years. And he said, no, we're getting married. So I said, all right, we'll go get married. So we get married, and, the first 6 months were okay. But slowly I saw certain things. And they were things, because my license is with the state of Florida, they were things that were not going to be acceptable for me. I married him to enhance my life, not complete it. My life was complete. So if he came to the table and he was going to drag that down, I couldn't be married. So we were on our way to get divorced. And at the time I didn't realize it, but he had spyware on everything I owned. And it was the night before he moved out that he actually physically attacked me. And the real horrible thing about that was he had moved out everything he owned and called me and said, can I please stay with you? I really need to be with you. And I let him in, despite really knowing in my heart it was not the right thing. But sometimes we don't listen to our heart. I've learned to listen to your heart, listen to your gut. So he attacked me that evening, and he's a former police officer. And he was 6 feet. I'm 5'4". He literally attacked me on the bed, and I tried to grab my phone, and he grabbed it from me, and I ran into the kitchen to get the keys so he'd never enter our house ever again. But all the time I'm like, how is this happening? How could this happen to me? And I said I wouldn't cry, but I know. This is one time I don't really cry about it because the story is inspirational more so. But
it's a traumatic thing.
It's a traumatic thing, and I think it's more just the reality of having it. So explaining it in such a depth than I normally wouldn't. But anyway, when I got up off the floor after he put his knee in my back and hand in a cock hold on the floor, we had a wood floor, and I think I passed out. But when I came to, I saw him walk into our balcony, and he took my phone and tossed it off. And we lived in a condo, and I just went out of the condo in pajamas, no shoes, no phone, nothing, in fear for my life. So I call 911, and I'm in the lobby, and as I'm on the phone, I hear, did she call the cops? And it was my ex-husband. And I'm still on the phone with 911, and I'm like, yes. And the concierge says, he says, good, call an ambulance. She stabbed me with a knife.
That's crazy.
So you hear me go from victim to, wait a second, is he going to see that I did this, to, oh my God, he's going to blame me? Now, in Florida, I should add, it's one of the mandatory arrest states that they currently have. There's only 30 in the U.S. So when you call 911, and I was unaware of this because this was never going to be part of my life. I mean, when OJ happened, I'm like, oh yeah, I grew up right between where OJ and his wife were, and right between Bundy and Kenter, and it was not something I paid attention to because, like I said, you know, we kind of go to what we know, always, which is the normal way of people acting. So when the police showed up, he went outside and met the police officers. He's fully dressed, and I don't see the wound. And the cops come in. I'm sitting inside patiently and quietly, and I'm shaking, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? But I'm thinking a part of me is like, they're here to rescue me. They're going to help me. And that could not have been further from the truth. So they come inside finally, and an ambulance shows up, takes them away, and they say, we need to go upstairs. And I said, okay, why are we going upstairs? And they don't say anything to me. So we go upstairs. I walk into the apartment that when I left was nothing. There's blood all over my apartment and a knife sitting on the kitchen sink. And I'm just like, oh my God. I was so traumatized just by the fact that they were taking me upstairs and then to walk into this like murder scene. So they walked me into my closet, and I was wearing this little bracelet, and they said, you need to take that off. And I look at the cop and I go, why? She says, because where you're going, I don't think you want to have that on. And I said, where am I going? She said, you're going to jail.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Then they proceeded to hand me, in case I didn't stand out enough, a pair of pearl and rhinestone jeans to go into jail. So I'm in the back it was funny, in the back of the car, and I'm thinking, how can I put my seatbelt on, because I'm a mother with 2 children. Yeah. And I'm just in a catatonic state, just thinking, how did this just happen? I've gotten bruises all over my body, literally all over at this point even. And they booked me, and I didn't sleep at all. Being in jail, it was just surreal. I was sitting across from a big woman, and she's like, what you in here for? And I'm like, well, apparently I stabbed I stabbed my husband. How do you answer a question like that? There's no book.
And your husband was a police officer.
He had been a cop, exactly.
So did he know the police officers that had come that day?
He didn't know them. He was a cop in another county in Florida. But once he said the magical words, I'm a former cop and she stabbed me, that was it. I was done. I had not a chance.
And so did they even interview you? Like, 'cause usually they are supposed to take people separate and ask them their stories.
They did not. They did not. They said, do you want to tell your story? This is how they did it. They said, do you want to tell your story to the detective, or do you want to speak to a lawyer? And I've watched enough of these true crime shows because I couldn't believe they actually happened, that I knew you should actually ask for a lawyer. Well, I didn't know that asking for a lawyer meant I'd be going to jail. So there's one lesson right there. So
they don't show that part. I guess they do go to maybe jail and they're like, let me see my lawyer, but you don't really think about that. You think you have some time.
You would think they put you like in a holding cell until they really determine what happened, because my case in particular, there are bruises all over my knees. My neck is, definitely is bruised. And I have no blood on my nightshirt, not an ounce of blood, except for where my finger got sliced from the phone. Anyway, so I go to jail. I get in front of the judge, and he looks at me and he says, have you ever been to jail before? And I said, no. And he says, okay. And he looks down again. He goes, do you have money in the bank? What do you do for a living? And I said, I've been in real estate development 23 years. And he's perplexed. You could tell he's perplexed. He's looking at me, he's looking at this, and it just didn't add up to him. So he sets the bail at 75. Of course, the bail bonds, or the prosecutor says 10. When I get out, I find out that I've been accused with a second-degree felony, assault with a deadly weapon, 1 under manslaughter. If convicted, 15 years mandatory in jail.
That's crazy.
Crazy.
So how long did you end up being in jail for?
14 hours, but it was the longest 14 hours
crazy.
I've ever had in my life.
And so how did you come out of this then? Because obviously finally the truth came out. So
the truth came out. I hired a great lawyer, and all I had was my truth. So I said, do not give me a plea. And when does he go to jail? Because that's all I cared about. And basically, my lawyer says to me, you do realize that this is mandatory 15 years if you don't take a plea. I said, I'm not taking a plea. So I think that helped me in my case. And then I took a polygraph before they deposed him. So after it came out, about 16 months later, I had created a company. It was very successful. And I always thought, I have two options here. I can crawl under my covers and cry about this horrible thing that has happened to me. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old. I've never been arrested in my life. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at a criminal justice system that there's really no justice unless you can afford your truth. And, I basically continued on, and I was like, well, my ex-husband's now going to see a whole lot more of me. I've always been pretty much in the public eye.
And so did he end up going to jail?
Absolutely not.
He didn't go to jail.
Nope.
How did nothing happen?
That's a great question. I don't know. I actually did write the book, Fabulous Framed, and there are a lot of policies and procedures that the Fort Lauderdale Police Department did not follow on the night of my arrest.
So he just basically got away with it?
He got away with it. He, when our trial was supposed to happen, and they finally were like, we're not sure. The state asked for my polygraph, which they always say polygraphs don't help, but when the pieces don't, make sense, they're going to try to figure out something. And they took the polygraph and said, no, we concur with her private polygraphist. She didn't commit this crime.
Yeah, because it didn't match up. You didn't have the blood on you.
Oh, so many things.
They didn't follow the protocol. They didn't look for fingerprints.
They didn't. And I kept saying, they've got to get the fingerprints. They found one latent fingerprint. And I said, well, if there's only one person who got stabbed and one person who says they didn't do it, why wouldn't you still do the DNA? But
yeah.
Anyway, there's
it's
a lot of
crazy,
things.
the whole system. So during this time, I mean, how did you feel at your lowest low, and how did you get through that?
My lowest low actually came about 12 hours after I got out of jail. And I started getting all these text messages from friends throughout Miami and Fort Lauderdale, where I worked predominantly in my real estate development. And what I found out was that my ex-husband, while I was in jail, went into my LinkedIn and sent everybody on my LinkedIn, all 2,000 or 2,200, my mugshot.
That's crazy.
That was crazy. And that was really hard. I thought I could control it, but once a mugshot is out there, it takes on a life of its own. And the only opportunity or choice you have is to fight that. And my way to fight that was hire, somebody to do my SEO, keep my profile up in a positive way. I never addressed what happened. I decided that the best way to do what I did was to go forward with my career, prove that I am who I am, and not really have to defend myself. You want to defend yourself when things happen, but yeah. I said, there's absolutely no way I'm going to defend
So for other abuse victims, looking back, or survivors, what is your advice to them of red flags to look for that maybe now you're looking back and you notice them, and how they can help not get in a situation like this?
I think some of the red flags that you definitely want to look for is somebody who's verbally abusive to begin with, and then slowly tries to isolate you from friends and family. And it happens very slowly. And when you're in it, you don't realize it until you look back and say, wow, I should have noticed that when he threw the remote control against the wall, that could have been a sign that maybe it's some aggression in him.
And did you notice those things earlier?
I did. Towards the end, I did. There was a lot of behaviors that were not what I would call acceptable. They were certainly signs that there was something more going on with him and that I should have watched for. So, we never know. And the one thing that has come out of this for me is we never think it's going to happen to us.
Yeah, I mean, especially you had an amazing job. You're the stereotypical type of person you would think, no, nothing would happen to them, ever. And that people would listen to you. And
my friends in California that I went to high school with and even have known forever, even in Florida, they were like, what? You were charged with stabbing somebody? You're the last person in the world that would stab anybody. You'd give your right arm for people. But, these things happen. And then we only have a few minutes left already, which I want to keep going longer. I can't believe it because we have more stories. When it comes to the, criminal justice system wrongly accusing people, how often does this happen? Right now, because the laws of domestic violence have changed, it happens now to about 30 to 40% of women in the mandatory arrest states. They get arrested because there's really no formal training on how to assess a victim versus a predator. And that is what my mission has been, is to try and change some laws, create some awareness. I'm working with a couple women now that have just had that happen to them. And they don't even know where to start. I mean, they're just trying to get over the mugshot being online, let alone being a victim and then re-victimized.
And then how do you, and before we get into where people can look up for help, how do you get over something like this? Because not only are you abused by somebody you love, which is such a hard thing to deal with,
Of course.
but you're also being wrongly accused, so the whole world is against you. So how do you get through that? And how do you stay strong and be a positive person?
Well, you fake it till you make it, as they say. I mean, there were days I went to marketing meetings in the morning, and then in the afternoon I'd have to go to criminal court to have a calendar call, and I just never fit in, and it was kind of a surreal world. They were completely different. But what I did was I basically decided that my truth, that I was going to hold on to it, even if I had to go to jail. And luckily, I didn't. But I think I chose that I had to make my success my own story, which would lead to, look, she didn't do it. My case was expunged. It was expunged and dismissed. But the reality is there's a mugshot there that'll be there forever. Yeah. So I initially had a mugshot on my book with me in present day.
And using it as
I said, well, if they're using it publicly.
Own your truth, basically.
Exactly.
If something bad happens to you, if you want to get through it, you need to own it.
You got to own it. You have to stand in front of it. And that's a real important thing. You got to stand in front of it. You're victimized. You're shamed. You're supposed to feel shame. You've got to stand in front of it and say, this isn't going to define me. I'm going to define this story with my...
And move forward. And that's what you're doing now. So can you tell everybody where they can find you as a resource and find out more about your book?
Absolutely. Raising Awareness for the Innocent is a website. If you can look up on that website, you'll find my book is available, as well as some information about what I currently am doing. I have a Facebook page called Raising Awareness for the Innocent with about 140,000 viewers currently on there. And it's really a great place to use your voice, stand in your truth, and not feel ashamed for things that have happened to you that you have no responsibility for. So that's one way. The Innocence Project I've been very involved with. That's a great place if you want to donate money and help see a change within our criminal justice system. That's where wrongfully arrested people get actually incarcerated, and they, after many years, are able to get some of them out of jail.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this story with us. So many people deal with abuse, and so many people don't even know this is what's going on in the criminal justice system. So I really appreciate it, and that you share this advice with so many people. Thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to follow her and check out her book. And don't forget to follow me at Lindsay B. Hoffman, and subscribe to Dose of Bliss on whatever platform you're watching on. Give it a like, give it us a comment, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.
Bye.